Jumping in, I have done my eyebrows or concealed my eyebrows off camera to save so much time. And then I take a white eyeliner pencil and I just outline everything for this Elf on the Shelf look. I want to say chippy, but apparently Elf on the Shelf, the Scout elves all get named different things and their naming process is quite strenuous, but that's neither here nor there. So I just outline his little like Kermit the Frog collar and his eyes and hair and all that jazz, just to give me like a rough outline of like where I want things to be, how I want things to go. Some people use black eyeshadow, but I've just found that using like a white eyeliner pencil helps me to see, and it's easy to clean up if I mess up. So that's why I use it. It's also covered up by most colors. Then I go in with some foundation because Elf on the Shelf dolls don't have uneven skin tones or pimples. So I go in with a full coverage foundation. I think this one is the Becca Ultimate Coverage Foundation. It does the job beautifully to give you like this nice porcelain-esque looking skin. So I just slapped that all over my face, blended it out. And then I took a beauty sponge and went back in and just made sure that it was like nice and blended and didn't look like patchy or swipey brush strokes. You know what I'm trying to say, people. Then I start on the hair. I take a brown cream paint. I think this one's from Wet n Wild. I think I used their Neutrals palette, their paint palette. And I just paint on the hair. Luckily, he wears, the Elf on the Shelf wears a hat, like a Santa hat-ish, or an elf hat, I guess, in this case. So I only really needed to paint the brown hair on my face. I didn't actually need to do anything to my actual hair, which was wonderful. So yeah, and he has this little like swoop in the front, which was not hard to get, but it was a little difficult to get it right where I needed it on my face, if that makes sense. With the Wet n Wild paint palettes or with the Wet n Wild paints, you really have to set them pretty heavily so that they don't move anywhere. So I just loaded it up with powder and just brushed off the excess. And then I went back in with a white cream paint, which I also think is from Wet n Wild. And I put on the like shine strokes because Elf on the Shelf is plastic. So you need to kind of like mimic where the light would hit. Eyebrows, those are pretty self-explanatory. Here I'm taking the white eyeliner pencil again and I'm just outlining the pupil and the iris of his eyes. I struggle the most in any cosplay with drawing on new eyes on my face for many, many reasons. But this particular one, it wasn't a struggle, it just looked really weird because I drew the eyes on so big, but the reference photos that I was using with an actual Elf on the Shelf doll picture, because we don't own an Elf on the Shelf, God, I don't have time for that. So I was looking at pictures and other makeup tutorials, and I decided to go big or go home with these huge oversized eyes, and I think it paid off in the end, but it was a little tricky getting the spacing right, that's for sure. All I can say is trust the process. There were a lot of times where I stopped and looked at these eyes and wanted to wipe them off and start again. I did not. I just pressed forward and pressed on. I figured I could change them as I went. Again, luckily, I think it all worked out in the end, but just trust the process, take a deep breath, and just power through it and move on. Also, if you see me mouthing or like talking in these videos, I'm not. I'm actually singing along to the music that I was listening to at the time, which is like a getting ready playlist that I've made on Spotify. So just talking to myself, that's fine. To finish the eyes off, I outlined the top of them, and Elf on the Shelf has like this weird like thick black line on top, almost like liner, with lashes, and then he has like a brown outline on the bottom of his eyes. So that's what I mimicked in this. I just did like a heavy black line on top with some cute little wispy lashes and then like a brown liner on the bottom. And then I used a white eyeliner, a liquid eyeliner, to create the like whites of his pupils, or like the shine on his pupils. I'm not really quite sure. Again. For his rosy cheeks, or her rosy cheeks, Elf on the Shelf comes in boys and girls now. I used a cream blush stick from NYX. I really like using this one, especially for cosplay. It's super pigmented and blends really well. Blended that out to create like a nice rounded cheek. Then I started to contour the face just a little bit. Elf on the Shelf doesn't have like a super contoured face, but I wanted to make my cheeks a little bit rounder. I wanted to make my nose appear a little bit more round. So I took some brown eyeshadow, or maybe this is a bronzer. I can't remember what I used. It'll all be linked down in the description box below. But I just took a bronzer or a brown eyeshadow and I rounded out my cheeks, rounded out my nose, got rid of my my double chin a little bit. And just kind of overall did a little bit of shading to make it look a little bit more like doll-like rather than human-like, if that makes sense. Adding more detail to my face. Again, plastic face requires shine marks and shading. These white splotches on my face are supposed to be representative of like a light shining on plastic to give it a little bit more depth. I don't know if they achieved what I wanted them to achieve, but it was fun figuring it out. I'm not the best at shading, so it's fun to experiment with that. The lips, the Elf on the Shelf has just like one lower lip. I don't know, it's weird. Did a little bit of shading on the eyeballs to add a little bit more depth, like they're set in, like they were pressed in plastic. I did have some issues with creasing on my eyes, so I went back in and I fixed the pigment, and then I took some translucent setting powder and just like pounced it on my eyelids and underneath my eyes to make sure that the pigments would not move anywhere or crease and stay for however long I needed it to. To add to the shimmering plastic effect, I added some highlight to those spots just to give a little bit more depth and definition. Moving on to the clothes, I am wearing a shirt. You just can't see it, as always. they have very, very simple clothes. It's just like this white Kermit collar and a red shirt, or rather like a red jumpsuit, if you will. So I just painted the white collar on and then painted on the rest of like my chest and arm areas red. Probably the hardest part is making sure that like this collar part looks pristine and somewhat even. I didn't really concern myself if it was even or not. I figured I would paint it all and draw it all out. But at the end of it, I thought it looked decent enough or passable enough. So I just kept it. All right, last little detail is the hat, adding a Santa hat to cover my hair and to fully transform into Elf on the Shelf. Gotta love autofocus. Really, around the holidays, you need to pick yourself up a nice quality Santa hat. They have them at the Dollar Tree. This one has been living long in my collection for like many years right now, and it's gotten a lot of use this year. So, last detail, that little bit of bake or powder that I have on my eyes, I just quickly brushed that away before I took my final pictures, so you couldn't see any like overcast or anything on it. However, this is the look, this is the end, this is what my Elf on the Shelf makeup looked like. If you are interested in turning yourself into an Elf on the Shelf, I will link all of the products that I used in the description box below so you can check them out on your own time. If you enjoyed this video, give it a big old thumbs up. As always, please be sure to subscribe and hit the little notification bell. I would hate for you to miss out on any more videos. Thanks so much for watching, guys.